I think it's almost undeniable that the cost of living crisis, as it is called, is having some sort of an impact on almost everybody. Everybody is seeing the price of everything increase, and this is one of these things where, unless you are the people who own the assets who greatly benefit from this, working class, middle class, not working, student, anything, retired, you are probably feeling the expenses of this, right? I was at the shop just the other day, and in the context of the videos that I've been making recently, actually acknowledging a lot of this stuff and researching into it a lot more, you really notice how much the prices have gone up. Like things that I remember costing, let's say, £2 when I started my degree about 3 years ago, are now like four, right? So it's undeniable that a lot of things have increased in price, and that is naturally going to have the biggest impact on the poorest people, because these are not the luxuries that we're talking about here. We're talking about bread, cheese, milk, and eggs, and that sort of stuff. Now, I know someone's going to say in the comments section, well, you shouldn't be eating these things. If you're really poor and you want to make something of yourself, eat nothing but noodles and be depressed for the next 10 years. Look, come on. You guys know where I'm coming from with this, right? A lot of things have increased in price, and yes, maybe that's just the way of the world, maybe it's not, but at the end of the day, people shouldn't have to limit themselves to one unhealthy thing for their entire diet. And by the way, even those cheap noodles have increased in price by about 50%. Anyway, let's get on to the actual topic of today's video. It's another one where I talk about the actual flip side of what most people see as the cost of living crisis, because a lot of people like to talk about this topic, a lot of people perhaps like to moan about this topic, and understandably so, for the reasons that I've outlined. But there is a flip side, and I think the reason why the cost of living at the minute, especially in places like the UK and the US, is so high is because of the lifestyle that we've been sold in places like the UK and the US. You see, when I talk to people about the cost of living, especially younger people, my own age, and even a mindset that I had arguably even before I started filming this video series about a week ago, was everything's so expensive, it's unattainable, it's undoable. But then you start to think about, well, what is too expensive? What is realistically too expensive? And you look at the way people live their lives, right? First things first, people are aspiring to things that are unnecessary. It is not a given virtue or a need to have a Mercedes-Benz or any expensive car. It's not a need. The car that I've got right now was less than £2,000 and it's 30 years old. Not a problem with the entire car. It runs like a dream, you know. That's one example. People spend too much money on unnecessary things that they just don't need. Netflix subscription is a luxury, right? Yes, it might have gone up, but you don't need it. Gym membership arguably is a necessity if you want to stay in shape, but that's just one example, right? A lot of these things, that was a very nice old Saab that just went past. A lot of these things are not needed, are wanted, and are seen as necessities when they're actually not. Even today, if you got the phone, you don't really even need the internet connection, because quite frankly, you can go to places where you can get it for free and work there. Now, is that ideal? No, it's absolutely less than ideal, but it is the case in a lot of things. People say that they can't afford to buy a house. What do you need to buy a house for? And this is the mindset, right? I can't afford to buy a house. Let's say me, for example. Now, here's the thing about me. I've accepted my position because I know a lot of people try and go at me in the comment section. It's a few people. Oh, well, you live in a lifestyle and you shouldn't be expecting to buy anything. Look, I've explained my situation before. You've seen the figures of my eBay selling. I am a business owner. That's the way I want to live, right? It's the way I want to live. I can accept the consequences that come with that. It means that some months I might be making profits of £4,000, £5,000, £6,000. Next month I might make none. Next month I might make 500. I might not see a future. And then the month after that I might make £10,000. That's just a way of this game. Now, recently my income has become a lot more stable, but the point is this: I'm willing to accept the challenges that come with a lifestyle that I want. And a lot of people are not, because a lot of people are sold a lifestyle that they don't need. Now, let me just focus on the point of housing, because that seems to be the biggest point that everyone focuses on these days. And I'm going to make an entire video on that in just a minute. Everyone says that they can't afford a house, but realistically, as a single man or woman, why do you need a house? Why do you even want a house? If I had a 4-bedroom house, as much as a privilege as that would be seen as, and as much as a sign of success, what benefit would it actually give to me, right? Would I move anybody in? Well, I might move a friend in, I might move a partner in, but what benefit actually comes from having a 4-bedroom house? You don't need that. It's an image sold to us. And that's obviously because consumerism is the way of this part of the world, simply put. And I don't think anybody can deny that. The reason why people have to work so hard is because the cost of life is so high. The reason why a lot of people, not the poorest in society, because, you know, people like to always say that poor people make stupid decisions, and maybe there's an argument to say that they should have got a good education or found a business or built a good job. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of these people who comment on poor people have never experienced being poor, right? A lot of poor people do not waste their money on luxury designer brand. A lot of them don't. Some of them do. A lot of poor people don't. And the people who say that poor people all think like this are probably the ones who never experienced that lifestyle. But here's my point, getting back to it, right? Everyone that I see in the UK, most people who have a car, the car's less than 15 years old, right? Which means it's going to be more expensive. Now, obviously 10 years old is going to be a lot cheaper than brand new, but half the cars, at least maybe 60% of the cars in the UK roads that I see, actually a few are coming up. That's nearly brand new. That is very expensive, the RS6. That is 2022, and that one's 2021. People are financing these cars. It's not a cost of living crisis. This car doesn't go wrong, hopefully, and it costs £1,600. All in all for repairs, it was like 2,000, right? It's not an expensive car at all. And this is where people massively go wrong, I believe. You see, when these are your goods, it's no wonder why your cost of living is so high. That's money that just goes straight down the drain. The idea of living in your own place, is it actually what you want? Is it actually what you need? Or is it a societal expectation? And this is what I think we at least need to ask. And so many people in today's world simply live by a set of standards that they don't even ask if they conform with their beliefs, right? So many people in today's world like to make this argument of the cost of life is so high, and a worker in 1950... Look, this is where I think everyone in this world is going wrong, or at least in this part of the world, the UK, the US. Were times better for workers in the 60s and 70s and 80s? From what I can tell, from the people that I've spoken to, friends, relatives, in good jobs, poor jobs, it seems that the social mobility level was potentially higher. But people can accept that about a lot of things. People can accept the cultural changes that we've seen since the 60s and 70s more broadly, but they can't actually relate how that comes back to work. And that comes back to the point of this cost of living crisis, because people are following an old school system that is not necessary anymore and doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. You do not need, in a market where statistically, and this is not anything more than statistics, in a market where if you're a man or a woman under, let's say, 25, you probably may have a decent career, you probably don't have a massive social circle, you possibly don't have a partner, you don't need in that and you most likely don't have kids. In that market, you don't need a 4-bedroom house. You don't need a big family car that costs a fortune to run, right? These are just the simple facts of life. Now, if you want to accept these things, these traditional measures of success, that's okay. If you want to drive around in a massive car, expect it's going to cost more money. If you want to have a house, expect that you're going to be paying a lot more, probably more than what you can afford. Because here's the fact of the matter: yes, ordinary working people are being robbed, but it's like a beat the game or join it, right? Beat the game or join it. Now, I've said before, my opinion is that the beat the game is either making so much money, whether that's online, in a job, or both, learning a skill, etc. Make so much money that the cost of living increases don't affect you at all. That's the beat the game. Also, it could be making some money or getting a remote job and moving away to a cheap place in the world. They're the beat the games, but the alternative is join the game. You can't have it both ways. I really don't think you can, and I really don't think you should, because this is where people are going wrong, right? The cost of living is undeniably increasing, but you'd be able to afford a lot more in terms of food, leisure activities, and probably work less as well, if you weren't following the standard conform ideas of what you need to achieve. You don't need a 4-bedroom house. You don't need an SUV. You know what I mean? You're 25 years old. You've got no kids. You've got no wife. You can happily live in a small flat, or a shared house, or a parent's house or a friend's house. Should you have to do that? Probably not. And if it wasn't the case in the past, then it is undeniable that for the same level of work, you get less out of the system. That's undeniably the case. But then again, like I say, this is why I need to focus on this point exclusively. Look at the societal changes and make a correlation, in the sense that like I say, people are quick to draw to certain changes in the world, but they will very rarely focus on what that means in terms of how we should live and why we should live like that. I think there is a strong argument to the fact that people's spending power should not be decreasing, but in a lot of markets, to a lot of people, the answer is it is. Now, again, a lot of that can be attributed to unnecessary costs. Don't buy an expensive car, don't go on expensive days out, you just don't need it. But the standard of life that people expect now is one where a nice house and a big car or a nice car or whatever is basically just it's seen as a given right, and it's not, right? It's not. Is the cost of everything seemingly going up? Yes. Is it seemingly the case that the richest are getting richer? Yes, it is seemingly the case. But at the same time, in a broken game, you can complain or you can look to change it. You can look to change things and switch things around. And too many people are just sat there complaining and not willing to switch it. And like I've said before, people like to say, in the world actually, and in the comment section, but when you've been doing this for so many years, you get used to it. People like to make the argument, oh, your little business thing's not going to work. That's fine, right? If my whole business idea genuinely doesn't come to fruition or doesn't work out, I know that there is a certain job that I can get without giving too much away, that doesn't require qualifications, that pays like £30,000 a year. I know I can already get it because I've got the stuff needed to get it, and it's a job that's always in demand. So I'm willing to take the risk, but not enough people are willing to accept the risk or the consequences of their lifestyle. It's a responsibility crisis for a lot of people. Now, again, I must emphasize, some people are genuinely struggling to pay the bills, but at the same time, a lot of people like to complain, right? It's a cost of responsibility crisis. I can say that if I want to try all of my different business ideas that I am trying, and I want to spend my full time focusing on that, I can say it might mean that for a few years I might be behind everybody else. It might mean for a few years I'm a little bit more poor. It might mean for a few years I am more financially unstable and I have to live at home or other things like that. That could be the case. But are you willing to take the sacrifice, right? Are you willing to take the sacrifice? And for me, I can acknowledge that this is likely to just be part of the scenario. It's likely to be the case that you're just going to have to accept this. And that's fine. I'm actually looking forward to that challenge. But if you're moaning about the cost of living crisis and you're expecting a big car and house at a young age, even if it's what your parents could have bought, even if it's what your grandparents could have bought, let's say in theory, well, the markets have changed, and you can complain or you can look round and accept facts. The markets simply are different in today's market, and there's a lot of different things for you to embrace. There's a lot of things to complain about, but you don't get anything from that. The best thing that you can do is probably just actually take some action on it. That's what I'd say. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon.